Well, today I'm going to show you how to use a Rollimat machine to polish a pivot that make a WW lathe cry. Now, my WW lathe is a good old lathe. It's done a lot of good for me over the years, but one of the things is on some of these clocks, you get a pivot. It's a pivot like this. You see that pivot? That's right up next to the pinion that runs the count wheel. So how do you polish this back one when the back one gets scummy? You know, a lot of watchmakers will chuck it right up on this pivot here. Then you can mark that pivot up with your lathe collar, or you break the thing off or some such, and you've always got to have a center rest up back here. And this thing's setting with its tail feathers to the wind, and that's just recipe for disaster. Some clockmakers don't polish it. They just send it out the door, and then I get it about 5 years later when it wears out the bushing and the clock won't strike with any degree of accuracy, and that's not any way to treat the customer or treat your clock for that matter. And I've seen some clockmakers take and they'll put a polishing wheel in a flex shaft and just kind of grab hold of the wheel and go around that pivot, and it'll make it look nice. You know, might polish it a little bit, but I'm not quite sure that's how I'd want to do things. So I've been on the waiting list for a while for the Rollimat machine. And this machine is something that is made in Austria, I believe. And our buddy Mark Butterworth in Muscatine, Iowa, is an American dealer for this machine. And it is kind of a little gem. It's a labor-saving device. And I kind of think that it's going to pay for itself and the aggravation that it saves me. And I'm going to show you a little bit about this machine. Now, this is what it looks like. It's a hand crank machine. They make one with an electric motor, but my shop is a hand-driven shop. I wouldn't know what to do with a motor when I had one in my lap anyway. So, I've got one that runs off of a hand crank. It's my understanding that the motor one is much the same in operation, only you just have to flip a switch instead of run the hand crank. Now you notice that it's not geared for speed. You don't want to run these real fast. You want to run them about 5-6 revolutions per second. Because you'll notice inside there's internal workings. And I think understand if you run that too fast, you can damage some of those internal workings. Now how this works is, you'll notice the headstock on the Rollimat turns. But its little arbor that it turns on stays stationary. Well, if we look inside there, you'll see that there's a gear attached to that arbor. And it stays stationary. Let's see if we can kind of get a better peek at it. It's in there. Way back. It's kind of hard to see. Now, the gear that you can see right here is attached to the underside of this polishing stone. It's actually steel, but we call it a polishing stone anyway. When you turn the crank, since that middle gear stays stationary, the gear with the polishing stone has got to turn because the stone's getting carried along with the Rollimat. And so the pivot polishing stone turns, and it turns in the opposite direction that the pivot's getting pushed. Now there's a little felt pad there. That felt pad is to hang on to some oil because you want to well lubricate this. These polishing stones are good for many thousands of pivots, but you want to keep them lubricated, so you keep them that way. And Mr. Butterworth does have a firm that will resurface them, from my understanding, but it shouldn't need to happen for quite some time to come. I think he said he's been running his for a term of years. Now you'll notice here that there's a wiper. That wiper catches the oil, and it's going to catch all the little chunks and pieces that the steel that's floating around in the oil off the pivots, so that we're not embedding it in the wheel or embedding it in the pivot or both. So you'll want to wipe that off too before you put your machine away. The controls on this are relatively simple and straightforward. What we've got is we've got a device for supporting the pivot, and it's numbered all the way around here from 3 to 3.6. And you measure your pivot in millimeters because this is European and they're all on the metric system there. And 0.3 of a millimeter pivot would go by the 3 all the way on to a 3.6 millimeter pivot. And I understand it'll even handle something just a tad bigger than 3.6. So once you've measured the pivot, and you just do that with a micrometer, this is just plenty good right here. You measure that pivot. All right, I'm back. Now, we all know how to measure a pivot. If you don't, tell me and I'll put up a video on that. But this tells me that that pivot is 1.7. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here where these numbers are. And you see there's 1.7 right there. Now it has to come down a couple notches. What we do is you unlock this screw, just like this. Okay? And this is a latch. If you look inside there, you'll see when I pull this back that it unhooks. And that's an indexing latch. So we bring this down to 1.7. And there you see it just clicked into place. So then we tighten this back into just like that. Now our tailstock has got an inside runner on it that floats. It's like that. Wouldn't be a bad idea every now and then. Give it a little bit of a drink. And then you can unlock this outside one, and that'll give you more room to get in and out of there. See, you want room to get in and out of here. And then this goes in like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to back this screw up. You turn it in to back it to decrease tension, and you pull it counterclockwise to increase the tension. So we're just going to go like that. Now that's your fine adjustment. Your rough adjustment is accomplished from here. And you'll notice that's very little tension. That adds still more tension, and then this is the most tension. For a nasty old scoungy pivot like we're doing, we're going to give it a lot of tension. When I store it in a box, I don't know if it makes a whole lot of difference, but I go like this. That takes the tension off. So that's quite a bit of tension right there. Now, you see that that's a little bit loose. Well, we can just back this out by degrees. See, and now it's pinched in good and tight. So we're going to, by means of this screw, you can adjust this outside barrel. And you can put it in just like that. We'll tighten that up. And then the telescoping inside runner there just kind of floats, and it's got this bail on it, you'll notice. Well, that bail, you hook your pinky right through there, and then you get a hold of the wheel. It's like this. Now, without the phone, this takes 2 seconds to do. With the phone, we're going to go like this. And then I'm going to spin this. You're going to get a little seasick watching this, and of course its focus is just trashy. And then I notice it's still feeling a little rough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this, I'm going to give this just a little bit more tension. Seasick time again. Pull in on that bail, and you can see the bail has got that side open. There we go. the bail has got that sandwiched in. It's got that just like that. And then you turn this, hang on to the wheel. It can't go anywhere. Get my fat finger. Well, my finger's on the wheel there. Now, we can come around. We can give this just a little bit more tension by backing that out. And then we do that a couple times. Then we've got that wheel just mighty clean and nice. It just takes a few licks to do it. You don't want to spin it terribly, terribly fast either. We'll back this out. Okay. Turn this screw forward and that takes the tension off. So we're not. Now, there's our pivot. Neat and sweet and oh so complete. And I don't know, you really can't see because the light's kind of trashy. Let me put an eyepiece on that. Look at how nice that pivot is. That'll go right in that clock. We put a new bushing on that back and that'll run like a dream. Now it might be that you want one of these Rollimat machines. And I'll tell you where you get it. And I'm not making a dime out of it. This fellow is named Mark Butterworth, and he runs a place called Butterworth Clocks. He's in Muscatine, Iowa. I'll put his information down below. And you give him a call. Have a talk with him about this Rollimat machine. He's a very good mechanic, and he can explain things about this that I never even had time to learn. And you might decide that you want one of these. Now, I'll warn you. They're frightful expensive. But sometimes it's worth laying a little bit of money down if you're going to get rid of a good deal of your aggravation. And you're going to have another tool in your arsenal that's going to help you improve your work and help you decrease your work time and help you give a customer something that's guaranteed a little better. And all those things kind of add up. And even if it doesn't dollar for dollar make its money back, it does it in the decreased aggravation. It does it in a decreased blood pressure. It does it in a decreased cussing and swearing and confession behavior when I go and break a pivot off, you know. So, that's the end of this video. It's the end of the sermon. I'll pass the plate and we all say amen. You have a good afternoon. Stop back. If I find more things you ought to know, I'll tell you.